Oh, you clicked again. Or maybe you clicked for the very first time. Regardless, I thank you. If this is your first experience with the Tall Mike Wine Podcast, let's just say this is not a typical episode. I'm Mike Stone. People call me Tall Mike. I'm 6'5", and I am wine obsessed and have been working with wine professionally for over 20 years. I'm the host of the podcast, heard in 21 countries now, on 5 continents, and in 41 of these United States and the District of Columbia. Welcome, Washington, D.C. From Kaneohe, Hawaii, to Ennis, Montana. From Butler, New Jersey, to Spanaway, Washington. From Walnut Creek, California, to Virginia Beach, Virginia. Wherever you are, I welcome you. It's now the middle of summer. I hope you're doing fun things. I work at the winery, Nicholson Ranch in Sonoma, where it's sort of getting busy, but it's not getting busy. Does that make sense? There's this weird traffic thing happening where it's not as busy as it was just a few months ago. Right after the vaccines rolled out, guests from all over the Bay Area came to see us in droves, in throngs. What's another word for a big group of people? In big groups of people. They came. Now I think a lot of those Bay Area people are on vacation, traveling, which is great. And some of the wine tourists from other parts of the country are now coming to see us. But there does seem to be a little bit of a gap. So we're not as busy right now at the winery, which is odd. But nonetheless, the grapes are ripening. You can see some imagery of ripening Pinot Noir grapes on my Instagram. That's Tall Mike Wine. It's also, I'm finding a difficult time to book guests for the podcast. So this is a solo episode, sort of a peek behind the scenes, if you will. I figure if I don't produce another episode every once in a while, and my last episode was over 2 weeks ago, I will cease to exist in the podcast world. I will, of course, exist. At least I think I exist. But I think you understand what I'm saying. So I'm at home. I live in Novato, California, not far from wine country, not far from San Francisco, and not far from the mighty Pacific Ocean. I do some of my most serious drinking when I'm at home. For instance, this evening, a couple of different wines. After I had a light cocktail to start the evening, that cocktail had tequila in it, but it wasn't a margarita. It was much more simple than that. Just a splash of tequila in some lemonade. See, it doesn't always have to be super fancy. But tonight, I did sample a couple of different wines. The first one was a Merlot from the state of Washington, one of the original cult wineries from Washington State, a winery called Quilceda Creek. I found through a little bit of researching this particular wine, a Merlot from the 2006 vintage, that they no longer make the Merlot from the Columbia Valley, which is sad because this Merlot was good, really good, and a little bit on the aged side, which means it was super soft, flavors really developing all the way out in the margins of flavor to the point where there wasn't a lot of fruit. It was just little wisps of fruit, but lots of spice, lots of what you get from the French oak barrels the wine was aged in. Lots of those non-fruit flavors, but very soft. The wine is softening out to the point where a lot of people might think it's over the hill. I don't know that it's over the hill, but I do believe it's getting close to being at the top of the hill, and it's going to be over the hill sometime soon. The wine I'm sipping right now is from Nicholson Ranch. Again, that's the winery where I work. We actually tasted this wine on a previous episode of the podcast. You might remember way back in February when I sat down with Deepak Gulrajani, the winemaker and owner of Nicholson Ranch. We tasted a wine for the February Wine Club release. called 777 Pinot Noir. It's made from a specific clone of Pinot Noir, all by itself, which is fairly rare. Most of the time when you sit and drink a Pinot, you're drinking a blend of different types of Pinot mixed together. And at Nicholson Ranch, there are 5 Pinot clones growing in the 14-acre Pinot Noir vineyard. And Deepak decided to make a small amount of simply 777 Pinot for the Nicholson Ranch Wine Club. This wine is delicious. It's heavy on the cherry and the wild raspberry and what we've come to call, for lack of a better explanation in the Pinot world, lots of cola. Definitely on. This is the 2016 777, so it's been aging for a bit. Yes, it's 5 years old now. Crazy. I like it. Now, if you'd like to have access to some of these wines that are only available for the Nicholson Ranch Wine Club, please check out the website and think about, perhaps, signing up for the club. That would be nicholsonranch.com. What else is going on in the world? Well, the Olympics are happening. I have to admit that I'm not really much of an Olympics watcher. I find it fascinating to hear about what's going on with the games and have the utmost respect for the athletes that have spent, in most cases, their whole lives getting good at their particular events. You know, spending all the time and all the dedication to make it to the Olympics. It's got to be an amazing thing. But as often happens in this world, when it turns into a television event, I just, I don't have time for that. So I like hearing about it, and I'm glad that things are going well for some of the athletes. I think it's great, but I'm not really tuned into it. What I like to watch in the evenings is a much simpler sort of sport. My little kitty cat, Olive. She's a beautiful black cat. She's 4 years old, and she loves her papa. She sits in our big picture window looking out at an enclosed patio that I've created in my condo, where I've got a bunch of potted plants, and that's where I do a lot of my serious wine drinking on the warmer summer evenings. And she likes to sit in the picture window. And every once in a while, a couple of little mice will wander onto the patio to scam some leftovers from the bird feeder. The birds, they make a big mess when they eat the seeds from the bird feeder. And they knock a lot of that stuff onto the ground. And about once a week I sweep it all up and clean up things. But, the mice come. And they collect what they can. And Olive really enjoys watching those mice. And I can tell what she's thinking when she does. She wants to eat them. That's what I'm watching right now. What else is on my plate? Well, when I've got free time, I actually have found some podcasts that I really enjoy listening to. I think I've talked about a few of them here on this podcast. And this podcast was developed due to the fact that I couldn't find a podcast about wine that I really enjoyed. And it was suggested to be by more than one person. That must mean I need to make my own, which now I have done. I recently discovered a podcast that I really like, and it's all about music. It breaks music down into its real basic elements: the structure, the notes, the chords, the lyrics. It's fascinating to me. It might be fascinating to you too, and I encourage you to check it out if music is a thing you're interested in. The podcast is called Keynotes, and it's hosted by a guy named Cuchna. He's a music geek, and I'd love to know what you think about this show, because I love it. In fact, I love it so much I listen to it with my headphones on, and just I get really into it. I love it. Check it out. It's called Keynotes. Well, I'm going to sit and finish my wine, and I hope you're having a lovely evening wherever you are. If it's evening. If it's morning, hey, I hope you're having a great morning. If it's midday, I hope whatever you have for lunch is enjoyable. This is the beauty of podcasts. People can check it out whenever they want to. And thank you for checking mine out. I hope to have a new guest sometime very soon. Or maybe I'll just continue to do these solo episodes with stream of consciousness. Maybe it'll turn into a thing. I don't know. It could. Anything's possible. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe to it on whichever app you're listening on. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, give me a rating. Give me a review. They tell me it helps a lot. If you've got feedback for me, send me an email at tallmikewine@gmail.com. Maybe you'd like to be a guest on the podcast. Maybe you'd like to sit down with me and drink some wine and talk about life. Think about it and send me an email. You can also see pictures on Instagram at tallmikewine. I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you're well. Thanks again. I'm Tall Mike Wine. This is the Tall Mike Wine Podcast. Cheers.